Good evening.
So, I don't.
I'd like to get underway. I didn't think we were going to have a lengthy meeting, and we would try not to have a lengthy meeting, but we have a lot of things to talk about. So good evening and welcome to the September 14th meeting of the Beachside Redevelopment Advisory Board. Welcome. For those of you who might want to participate in items on our agenda or any item on your mind, please fill out a form over here. And if you would clearly print your name, that would make it much better for me. I'll get it the first time around then. Could I call for a roll call, please?
Dino Paspalaskas.
Here.
Robert Ellis.
Here.
Gary Libby.
Here.
Teresa Doan.
Here.
Krista Goodrich.
Here.
Tony Servants.
Present.
Wonderful. Before we move on, I think we will insert the Pledge of Allegiance here. We didn't include it in the agenda. It was just an oversight. So if Krista, you'd lead us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Also, I'd like to take the liberty of introducing, I guess is it Lieutenant Bernard?
Yes.
Lieutenant Bernard to give us an update on things happening on the beachside. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening. Hello,
Welcome.
everyone.
Hey there, how you doing?
I'm Lieutenant Davin. I'll try to talk to you guys while I'm standing up here. I'm the beachside shift, night shift lieutenant here, one of them. There's two of us, obviously. So I'm, responsible for everything from the tracks east. I'll go over some of the ComStat report numbers with you and a couple other things, and I'll get out of your way here. So basically, total burglaries, which are residents and non-residents, are down 29%. Got total larcenies. I didn't get the print this out. I had to pull it off my phone. Total larcenies, which are larcenies, car breaks, shoplifting, bicycle thefts, total are down also 19%. Total armed robberies or strong armed robberies are down 11%. Total aggravated batteries, which are aggravated assault and battery or batteries to a person, are down 50%. Person shot, we're up 29%. We're actually doing an op tonight. That's why I kept this on. All my guys are wearing some tack vests. We're going to be doing some burglary ops, some car brake suppression. Somebody called in to complain about something about Bethune Point where somebody may have moved around some boulders or something to make some get access in there. So we're dealing with that tonight. And just the mere having extra presence out there kind of helps to, knock some of these crime trends down. But most part, what else we got here? We got property crimes and person crimes are down 40%. And firearms offenses and domestic violence. Domestic violence is down 25%, and the firearms offenses are down 42%. So for the domestic violence to be down 25% is pretty good too. That's mostly what we service here over on the beach side, is a lot of domestic violence.
And I'm sorry, is this down from this time last year or down?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Any additional questions? Has there been any resolution to that very bizarre two-car accident at the corner of Peninsula and Main Street during our last special event, where the one car was coming over the bridge? He was loaded. He had just gotten out of prison and ran into a car, and the car hit a pedestrian, and then the car went through the gates of Pinewood Cemetery. They're finally up. We finally have them back corrected.
That was during my time off. You know anything about any of that? No. I can find out and shoot you an email.
Super.
Get you an update from
Super.
one of our traffic homicide investigators probably did that investigation, so that'd be pretty much.
You guys were terrific, really. You had the corner under control there. I mean, it could have been really much worse than it was. So.
I'll forward it all to Captain Niccolo, and then he'll get it out to you. I'll make
Thank
sure
you.
that happens.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else? Nobody
Any
else?
other questions? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Have a nice night.
Thank you.
We had some lengthy minutes. I'm wondering if anyone has any corrections, any additions, any changes to any of the items in the minutes. Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to approve as drafted.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Paskalakis.
I'll second.
Second. All those in favor, please do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We have a unanimous passage of the minutes. Under old business, we really have a few items under new business that relate to that set of minutes in our previous discussion. And if it's all right with staff, we'll go right to the new business items then, unless anyone has any item that would qualify under old business. Hearing none, we'll go right to new business. The Public Works is here, I guess, and I guess we'll make a presentation.
While David is coming, this is one of those items that it's in your redevelopment plan, and it's been there for a few years that we've been wanting to do underground utilities for the ISB. And so now it's happening.
Excellent, bravo. Good
Good
evening.
evening. My name is David Waller. I'm the Public Works Director, and just want to kind of give you an update on this project. This really goes back to, I know it's in your plan. Back in 2018, the City Commission funded a kind of a seed money to start the planning for the rework of ISB from the river to the ocean. And part of that, process, and the city had wanted to underground as part of our goals on the Beachside, to harden the infrastructure in a lot of ways for our resilience, and then also to make room for some beautification improvements. And so we're ready to move forward with that part of the project. And the City Commission last week actually finally approved or authorized the city manager enter into the agreements with FP&L to do that. The anticipated cost is $1.5 million and some change. We're still working through some of the final numbers with them, but we anticipate that to work within our budget. And the CRA is funding those improvements, and that makes a segue for FDOT to do the roadway improvements and landscape improvements that are going to happen in that corridor. And FDOT's investing about $20 million in the project, so kind of the return on investment for us as a city, and the CRA is pretty astounding that we can get that kind of return on our investment. I've got the video from FDOT as their project video that they did recently at a public meeting that we'd like to share with you guys in case somebody has not seen that. It's available online as well if somebody'd like to see it later. And I brought a board. It's got the state's proposed landscape plan in it, so it gives you a good overview of the turn lanes and intersection improvements and kind of what the long-range plan is for. They're calling the landscaping phase 2 because they've just separated it from the construction project, but that'll all happen sequentially together, so it's all anticipated to happen. Time-wise, we're anticipating to issue our authorization to FP&L, and then within this month, get them ordering equipment. We expect them to start construction on the undergrounding by the end of this calendar year. And FDOT current schedule has them letting the bid out in July, and they'll have their evaluation period. So then, by the end of that calendar year, winter of 23, we anticipate the actual construction, roadway improvements. And I don't have a time frame on that, but I would anticipate it to be probably 12 to 18 months, and go immediately into phase 2 landscaping. So as their project gets ready to let, we'll be able to, in summer, we'll get a firmer idea on actual schedule. But pretty exciting project for the city. Big gateway moment for us to come down the bridge and have a roadway that meets current standards, wider sidewalks, median, some access control, and create some beautification opportunities. DOT is doing way more than the typical DOT project on this. We've got really good project managers and partnerships with DOT in Daytona Beach right now, and you're going to see a product that's not your typical DOT roadway. You'll see it in these plans. It's a mix. They've had to aware of the coalition that the DOT put together. Residents, getting a lot of feedback on our beachside roads, A1A, Mason, Seabreeze, ISB, and are implementing a lot of that feedback into the project. This particular roadway, you'll see in the finished Phase 2 landscaping, a significant amount of medjool palms to be consistent with what we've got on Beach Street and Ridgewood and Bevel and other end of ISB. But it's also including a fair amount of canopy trees. They've got some oak trees and shade and
Super.
a big conversation from the feedback from the residents. They want to see places to walk, and we're implementing that on this stretch of road, which is very non-DOT-ish, pretty neat to see. And they have agreed to the wider multi-use paths and wider sidewalks. Have a pretty dynamic entryway onto the beach side that hopefully will spur some, our goal is to spur some redevelopment and excitement.
What will the width of the sidewalks be?
There's sections that are 8 feet and there's sections that are 12 feet.
Okay.
There's some, we removed the utility poles, which is a big part of making room for
Right.
that. And putting the trees on the north and south side of the road. Some of those are going to end up in grates to maintain that path. The only things that will be working in that stretch other than that is the lighting.
Whose responsibility will be for ongoing maintenance? Is it
Ongoing maintenance belongs to the city.
on to-
We currently maintain that corridor from a landscape perspective with it's one of our MOA areas, maintenance agreements, and we'll continue that, just like we do on Oak Ridge and A1A. And
Is that too big to pass around, or?
it is,
Pretty large.
I tell you what, like, can we,
typical presentations are like groups, we can stand around and talk about it and look at it and point, so I brought this board, and I'm happy to slide it down the dais.
Well,
You guys-
maybe
I'll
we'll-
leave it as well.
maybe we'll listen, would you like to see the video? I mean, would the committee like to see it? How long is it?
It's just like
Oh, you got it, okay,
a
yeah,
couple
go
of
ahead.
3 minutes.
Yeah, let's do the, if it's an agreement, we're all in agreement. All right, let's do the video. That would be terrific.
During the meeting, we will present information on the department's plans to improve safety and enhance operations through this project. We encourage your feedback, and during the presentation, we will provide multiple ways you can submit your questions and comments to us about this project. All comments and questions will be responded to after the meeting and will become part of the public meeting record. This meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format to provide multiple ways for the public to receive information about the project and provide input. This meeting is being conducted in person, virtually through GoToWebinar, and over the phone. If you dialed in today on a telephone line, the presentation is available on the project webpage at cflroads.com/project/437942-1. This public meeting was advertised and is being conducted in accordance with state and federal requirements, including Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Public participation is solicited without regard to race, color, national origin, age, sex, religion, disability, or family status. Persons wishing to express their concerns about Title VI may do so by contacting Jennifer Smith, District 5 Title VI Coordinator, by mail at 719 South Woodland Boulevard, DeLand, Florida, 32720, by phone at 386-943-5367, or email at jennifer.smith2@dot.state.fl.us. You may also contact Jacqueline Paramore, State Title VI Coordinator, by mail at 605 Suwannee Street, Mail Station 65, Tallahassee, Florida, 32399-0450, by phone at 850-414-4753, or email at jacqueline.paramore@dot.state.fl.us. This information is shown on the sign at the in-person location, on the project website, and in the meeting notifications. This corridor improvements project is on International Speedway Boulevard, US 92, from the Halifax River Bridge to State Road A1A. Through the project limits, International Speedway Boulevard is a principal arterial urban roadway and serves as a hurricane evacuation route. The purpose of the project is to enhance safety and improve operations for drivers, pedestrians, and bicyclists. Following a public hearing in October 2020, FDOT revised the plans to address community concerns. The proposed improvements along International Speedway Boulevard begin at the Halifax River Bridge. A raised median and a 10-foot sidewalk on the south side of the roadway will be provided to Halifax Avenue. The proposed improvements include widening International Speedway Boulevard to provide wider travel lanes and a raised median. Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA-compliant sidewalks, and curb ramps will be incorporated throughout the corridor. Additionally, signals will be reconstructed at Halifax Avenue, Peninsula Drive, State Road 441, and Grandview Avenue. The proposed improvements will include a signal with new right turn lanes constructed on both eastbound International Speedway Boulevard and southbound State Road A1A. Enhanced crosswalks will be provided at Halifax Avenue and Grandview Avenue to improve pedestrian safety. The proposed improvements for International Speedway Boulevard include 10-foot wide and 11-foot wide travel lanes in each direction. A 15.5-foot raised median provides areas for landscaping. Pedestrian facilities will be provided on each side of the roadway, with a 10-foot sidewalk on the south side and a 6-foot sidewalk on the north side of International Speedway Boulevard. Landscaping elements will be installed as part of a different project following the completion of the improvements to International Speedway Boulevard. We are currently in the design phase of the project schedule. Final design is anticipated to be completed by late 2022. Right-of-way acquisition began in 2021 and is ongoing through 2022. Construction is funded and expected to start in spring of 2023.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I know that the division line between the South Atlantic redevelopment zone and the Beachside redevelopment zone is the middle of International Speedway Boulevard. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Will the ongoing maintenance be an annual expense for each one of these or how are we going to handle that? Or will it be independent of redevelopment funds? Because I know the county is always sort of gets a little cranky when they think we're doing regular maintenance with redevelopment money.
Yeah, the landscape maintenance is a general fund expense.
Is a general fund
Yeah, it
expense.
doesn't go back to the CRA.
Terrific.
Right.
Terrific.
And you mentioned the CRA breaking down the median. The undergrounding is being done on the north side of the road, which makes it
Excellent.
helpful.
Yeah. Good idea.
That was not by accident.
That's where the money is, the north side of the. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
It
Chris.
said one of the improvements was for bicyclists. What is the improvement for bicyclists?
The improvement for the bicyclists is the multi-use trail width in the sidewalk. And there was a lot of discussion early on with FDOT wanting to put a bike lane down on this section of East ISB. And at our level, the staff level, we asked to put that square foot of space into a wider sidewalk. It doesn't connect to a pedestrian or a bicycle feature on A1A or across the bridge and the rest of ISB. So getting those 10-foot and wider sidewalks is bikes hopefully off of the road.
Will there be signage to say in this area bikes aren't to be on the road?
I think
'Cause
I believe they've got they call them the spill lanes or
Right.
whatever, where the bikes can get back up onto the sidewalk. If they come over the bridge on the shoulder, they'll be able to jump up on the sidewalk. There'll be a catch lane
Okay.
for them, like they did on Oak Ridge.
Okay.
Terrific. Anything else? Teresa?
Very exciting.
Tony?
Long time coming.
Yeah.
Oh, nothing. Just glad, excited that it's coming. Make it beautified.
Dino?
I'm good.
Very good.
Man?
I have nothing.
I can
Thank you.
remember not that long ago when we had an important delegation coming in from Tallahassee to visit our city, and the city commissioners decided we would bring them over the Granada Bridge because it was a much more polite way of introducing our community to this group. And it's wonderful, all the improvements that have happened, especially on the west side, and now that are coming east, I think are not so much overdue. Maybe this is the time to do them, but very welcome, and I think will help tremendously.
It has been it's been a slow march down ISB. I mean, we the speed zone worked. It was done 7 or 8 years ago, and then we did
Correct.
some work up around Lincoln and came up through that way up past Mainland High School, and and then we've got this stretch, and it really just leaves that really urban core there, just kind of between, I guess, just inside of Nova down through. It just doesn't really have a lot of real estate right-of-way space, but I think that's a big deal. We're pretty excited.
Have you started looking at the upgrading of landscaping in the Beachside redevelopment area now that we're going to have a first-class, gorgeously landscaped entrance to the area? Are there any plans, either in the back of your mind or on paper, yet to start to spread the grandeur of serious landscaping that certainly drive up hugely real estate values and make it a much more attractive destination for visitors, and we are a visitor center.
I mean, I think just one of the most important things we can do in public spaces is make them as attractive as we can. As a city in the jurisdiction to share our roadways, we are the largest property owner in the city, right? Beachside is a little bit unique in that the right-of-way is generally very narrow. There's not a lot of space for those improvements to happen within the right-of-way. And even what we're doing here on East ISP, to get over that hump to have that visual appeal that I think we want to see as a community. A lot of that has to happen on the private property side as they abut our public improvements. A1A is poised to have another one of these RRR DOT projects come through there that it's going to adjust a lot of that landscaping. So I think a lot of that's going to change depending on what the outcome of that is.
Yeah.
They're in the phase getting a lot of public input and how what the typical section is going to be, medians or no medians, and put that space in the sidewalks, which I think has a lot of value from a usability. A lot of our issues on A1A traffic-wise on busy weekends, derivative of not having enough space on the sidewalks to keep folks on the sidewalks, right? I think the improvements that were recently done on Oak Ridge are a huge improvement to that corridor. We are looking at Seabreeze in coordination with FDOT as well to do some improvements there to kind of update that on the Seabreeze corridor.
We need it on the Seabreeze corridor.
Seabreeze is a pretty unique street. It's a state-owned right-of-way, kind of like in Maine, it's a county-owned right-of-way in which we've done streetscapes, but the streetscapes are getting beyond their useful life, so to speak, and they need to be freshened up and have a new take on those to meet today's expectations and spur that continued growth.
Well, I hope you continue to work with the staff of this redevelopment board, because there are probably 15 items in the E-zone plan, in the Main Street plan, and in the South Atlantic plan that are all landscape-based. And they have been in there sort of waiting, like a chrysalis of a butterfly, waiting to become fully formed. And maybe this project will help do it. And not all of them are huge $1.5 million or $2 or $3 million projects. Many of them are, $100,000, $150,000 that would make a huge improvement. And
I work with Ken, and we can identify some of those. Happy to look at them, where they are. We put a lot of effort into breakers and the Harvey lot and Oceanfront Park to try to put a little better presentation on our public spaces. Where they're heavily used. They get a constant battle because they get significant wear, but those are why we focus on those, because they are important.
Landscaping is where it's at. If you travel around the state of Florida and you see those areas that were competitive with us 25 years ago that have moved slightly ahead of us in different kinds of conventions and things, they're all very heavily landscaped, new landscaping, a very attractive landscape, especially over on the Gulf Coast. In the same grow zone, too, not anything more subtropical than we are.
A lot of you're seeing it in your private redevelopments. They're recognizing the value of that. Look at the redo of the Hard Rock Hotel, and they really focused heavily on that presence from the right of way on both the parking lots, and they don't do that out of the goodness of their heart. They recognize that increases the value of the rooms.
And maybe sooner or later, when a developer comes to the city and wants us to waive the right-of-ways so that they can have a bigger pool deck, and we shrink the sidewalk and have no landscaping between the sidewalk and the building, which is happening now north of Seabreeze Boulevard on the ocean, we will have learned our lesson. I think we're slowly learning that the trade-off really doesn't benefit our city. To have a narrow sidewalk where people have to walk behind each other and no landscaping to introduce a building, the size of that building. I drive by it on a regular, and you know exactly the building I'm talking about. You could reach out from the sidewalk and touch the building. It's that close to it's eaten the public right away. So I hope this becomes a huge rallying point, this project, and I think it probably will.
I think it's going to be a great project. We're looking forward to it.
And thank you for your hard work on it. I know you.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
So I heard you mention some things were happening on obviously ISB and then Seabreeze, and anything in the works for Main Street?
We anticipate funding in this budget year to start working some design work on what Main Street's going to look like. First phases, and that's going to be getting input from the community members, from boards like this, and our first part of that is going to be getting feedback. So yes, I think we're going to see a design portion coming through in this budget year, which is 2 weeks away.
Awesome. Thank
It's right
you.
around
Right
the
up on it.
corner. I'm sure the county is going to be ecstatically happy when they get their required annual report on what we're doing with redevelopment funds to see how much you've multiplied them with the state DOT. That's a wonderful. I don't think people realize what a huge thing that is. So congratulations. Anything else? Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. I'm going to leave this board here with you guys in case anybody wants to look at it after the
Mr.
meeting.
Chair,
Yes.
2 speakers, public speakers for,
For this project.
Yes.
Very good. And let's see, there are 2 speakers and I've got 3 people here, so.
you can go ahead, and I'll just add that to yours.
Who would like to be first?
She was first.
Good evening.
Hey,
Please-
good evening, everybody. Jenny Nazak, 501 Harvey. Landscaping, it's good to talk about landscaping. I always dreamed of living by the beach my whole life because I had always visited beaches my whole life. When people come to the beach, they expect it to look beachy. And there are distinctive plants that grow by the beach. Not every plant has to not every plant has to be native or whatever, but it is really jarring if you come to the beach and there's a whole median full of bright green turf grass. It's like a mini lawn in the middle of the highway. The trend nationwide and worldwide is to go more natural and native, and it saves money and it's more authentic, and it's like Mother Nature giving us a free brand identity, like a multi-million-dollar brand identity for free. So as much as possible, we can use dune daisies, sea oats, muley grasses, and those kind of things can be used to also keep people from walking where we don't want them to walk as well. I always hear people complaining about people walking across the street where there shouldn't. Well, plant some tall grasses, make it authentic. Harvey Avenue, that's where I live. When I walk to the beach, I always walk up Harvey Avenue. One day I walk up there, and the perfectly fine sand or gravel or whatever it was lot, it was suddenly dark black asphalt. And asphalt can be 40 degrees temperature higher than crushed shell or whatever kind of ground. This is backwards. It makes us look really backwards because the trend now is to get away from heat island effects and really intensely hot types of pavement alternatives. And I know that some of my fellow citizens are trying to look into what some alternatives are. But one of the best alternatives is if it's fine the way it is, don't feel like it's improving it to coat it with asphalt. That parking lot on Harvey was fine. It was fine. It was just a beach parking lot.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Yeah.
Jenny, also, don't forget that there's a county council in DeLand and that they control the beach, and that we've had this discussion for the 40 years.
They control the dunes, and they actually do a good job because they leave the dunes alone. I want to talk to them about the Ocean Center and the Taco Bell shredded cheddar mulch and all the tacky
Correct.
stuff they do over there, and
Correct.
shaving the grass all the time.
But don't forget them because they're a very important part of the deal. And our former county manager was stashing away millions of dollars of ECHO money to put a boardwalk in that was going to connect all the entrances to the beach.
Remember that.
And they were going to be completely redone. He's no longer with us, and the money is sitting in the trust fund. Maybe you could start people thinking about a good use of that. Now it's almost $20 million sitting there
Wow.
to do beach improvements would be a great
The thing
idea.
is, what I'm talking about doesn't even cost more. The amount of money that we channel into the obsessive maintenance of chemical turf grass is disgusting.
Yeah.
I watched during a drought, sprinklers yeah, no.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. Mr. Brown, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Inspector Brown, 1508 Crescent Ridge, Daytona Beach. Yeah, there's 3 points I want to talk about. First of all, I'm really excited, like you, this is way overdue. For years, we've needed this. We also, as was mentioned, needed to be expanded in other areas. And some of the things I want to talk about, and I'm going to back up some of the stuff that Jenny just said. First of all, safety. You got to admit, we are a beachside tourist attraction, without a doubt. That's where our money comes from. Have been for hundreds of years, well, at least 150. And the tourist as well as residential safety is paramount. One of the things that I don't see in the DOT proposals, I'm a big fan of the Hawk system for crosswalks. I would like to see that augmented with in-roadway lighting. Okay, it's IRWL. And if you're not familiar with it, you ever been down to Marco Island, Collier County? That's where you put the lights down in the roadway. Now, why does that make sense? Because when you have lights overhead, where do your eyes go? Look up there. And the Daytona Shores made the same mistake with those strobe signs. Your eyes go up here. 2 women were hit, one of them killed tragically at the end of my street. Why? Because the crossing was poor. It was in the darkest area of the street. We also have this sign ordinance where the signs have to be lower. So what do? You put a bright white light in the face. I've driven that many times. You cannot see that crosswalk.
Yeah.
They have the technology where you put these in-roadway lightings, you have the strobes so the drivers see that, and you have uplights so you can light the pedestrians as they cross. They also have them with the down focus lights. But the one where the woman got killed, the other one got pretty badly maimed, okay, they probably won't be back to visit. Well, obviously the one that's dead won't. But the point is, if you have it safe, how many, it seems like every year we kill a bunch of people. We need to stop that. So, my point is we need to standardize. I've been talking to the the city commission about this ad nauseum, and I don't think they get it. If you've actually seen one in action, you'll know the difference. Mm-hmm. We got to stop killing our guests, our tourists, and our citizens, as well as the pets. To back up what Jenny said, the missing word, now I am a big fan of native, okay? When you hire a quote-unquote professional architect, which is what everybody does when they have a project, you hire one. They do textbook stuff, same plants. Now, I come from an environment, like the theme park world, where they have cookie-cutter landscape that doesn't necessarily belong there. Jenny's point is excellent. Okay? We need to have plants to survive well. There's so many plants that grow well here and will look good here. And as she pointed out, look beachier. We don't want to have the same thing that they have in DeLand. We don't want the same thing they have in Orlando. This is Daytona Beach. It's a unique structure, so I'd like to see that. Third point about asphalt. We need drainage, not more asphalt. Asphalt is bad, 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 and it's high maintenance. And the last thing, I want to plan ahead for public transportation, please.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Brown. Okay, anyone else? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Mr. Nicholson is coming.
John Nicholson's walking up.
Is John, are you on this one too, John? Okay. Welcome, Mr. John Nicholson.
John Nicholson, Beachside. A couple of things. One, I agree with Jenny on Lush. I like the idea of no maintenance. When we first did A1A, they had Collins do it, all right? Staff went through and mulched everything. We had the staff starting at ISB, took them 2 weeks to get the sea breeze, then they started ISB all over again. So basically all they did was pull weeds, which is ridiculous. So that's why there's so much grass that's there now, is to prevent the idea of spending all their time pulling weeds. Jim, I gave him another design and he didn't want it because it was too costly. So that's why you have your grass and the design that I made that's there now, all right? The whole idea is if you put in dune grasses and whatnot, you don't maintain them. They just grow. You don't cut, you don't prune, if you're going to have a tree of some sort, prune it once every 3 or 4 years, saves on maintenance cost. It looks good. It prevents people from crossing over. It gives you your oxygen. There are many good reasons to do so. However, having said that, we redid Oak Ridge recently. You go down Oak Ridge and you come over the Oak Ridge Bridge, all you see is yellow. There's 27 crossings, 4 per block, and that's what they're going to be doing down probably ISB as well. You don't want, I know you want safety, okay? But where do you balance safety and ugly? All right? If you're putting all this stuff, you might as well put chain link fences and barbed wire. That's safe. They won't cross with that. But it looks terrible. That's why we don't have chain link fences on our major roads, all right? Because it looks terrible. So when they do this, take very good care of what you're looking at, because that's what tourists are going to see. It's been 35 years since, remember, Van Kewen decided that she was going to redo ISB. We've waited 35 years for this. We really don't want to screw it up after 35 years.
Longer.
Yes. So, Main Street, be careful what's happening on Main Street. They want to do the exact same thing that they did on Beach Street. All that white, the sidewalks become white and the crossings become white, and after you drive over it once or twice, it's dark gray. So look what's happening on Beach Street. That's what they want to do on Main Street. I don't think that's what we really, really want.
Thank you, John.
Okay. No, a couple more things. Bollards. He wants to put 120 bollards per intersection. All right? 40 bollards on each corner. Be careful because people will have to walk in the street, get around the bollards because you can't walk side by side.
Thank you. If you travel around the state of Florida and you see a lot of the new landscaping that's been put in from Palm Beach north up the coast to where we are, it's very similar, but the thing that's different is the maintenance. In certain parts of the state, for example, in Naples, all the public works material is done at night. The workers are not out during the day. It's already done when you wake up in the morning. I mean, there are all kinds of things, John, that I think distinguish, the look of the same landscape and a similar situation, how one looks fresh and new all the time and the other one doesn't. And I think that's why my question on maintenance was right at the front end of our discussion on this, because it's a big commitment on the part of the city to maintain that as elegantly. And I've noticed driving around the city, there's a higher level of maintenance, especially on the west side, some tremendous improvements, and I think on the beach side as well. We are primarily focused on Beachside, and there are elements, in the plans that directly address this, John, and in general terms that probably could be shaped or sharpened. And I have great confidence in the city staff. I think we've got some really good people in key positions who will head us in the right direction. And of course, the Department of Transportation, John, DOT, I kept referring you to go to the land and speak to them because that's a very hard act to penetrate. And it's very, very, I think we did a great negotiation on International Speedway Boulevard. As our former mayor used to say, the proof is in the pudding. The proof was never in the pudding, it was always in the tasting of the pudding. And I think the proof will be in the tasting of this pudding, and it'll taste real good when that project is done. Anything else on this? If not, let's move on to the fencing, presentation on fencing.
Mr. Chairman, as Rose Askew is coming forward from our planning department,
Terrific.
she will be doing the presentation.
Good evening, Rose Askew, my friend, good old friend from Board of Adjustments.
Yes,
Good to see
Board
you.
of Adjustments. How are you all tonight?
Good evening.
As Mr. Libby stated, I am Rose Askew. I am the Development Service Project Manager. Tonight, I am doing a courtesy presentation for a Land Development Code text amendment. It's a request by the Development and Administrative Services Department, Planning Division, to amend Article 6, Section 6.8, 6.14, fences, walls, and hedges of the Land Development Code to modify and clarify development standards for repair, replacement, and maintenance of fences and walls. So a little bit of background. The reason this became important was over the last couple of years, we've received complaints from residents who have been in violation for fencing. Well, our Land Development Code, the way the language is currently written, it was requiring some people to have to get permits. Some people are not required to get permits. Some people were being told they had to paint their entire fence when they really should have only had to paint it if the fence was painted originally. And the language that's currently in there is kind of, it doesn't really clarify. So we took a look at the language that's currently in there, and we're proposing some changes to try to clarify it and also to assist with making sure that when people are cited, the correct repairs are being made. So a little bit of background. Redevelopment area standards in 6.14J2 of the Land Development Code requires repairs to all auxiliary structures, including fences and walls, to be painted to present a neat and finished appearance. That should be if they're painted, if they were painted originally. So that's one of the purpose of the language was to require any auxiliary structures that are already painted to be repaired as part of repairs. Because of the way the language was written, it is being interpreted as all fences and walls had to be painted regardless of whether the structure was painted prior to the repair.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Yeah.
So we reviewed the current use-specific standards for fences and walls in Article 6, Section 6.8, and 6.14 of the Land Development Code, and it revealed an inconsistency and ambiguity in the standards relating to repair and replacement and maintenance of fences and walls. In Section 6.8, the LDC requires any fences and walls erected on or before March 1st, 2015 to obtain a permit. The standard does not address requirements for fences and walls erected after March 15, 2015. So to improve the clarity and remove inconsistency in the regulations for fences and walls, staff is proposing the following modifications. So we're proposing to amend Section 6.8, fences, walls, and hedges, to modify the standards to apply to all fences and walls, and we're going to delete the requirement to obtain a permit. So that'll mean they won't have to get a permit, but whenever they're doing fencing repairs of 50% or more of the fencing, they will have to provide documentation to the Permits and Licensing Department that will show they are meeting building code regulations and land development code regulations for the fence. And whatever costs are involved with actually doing the repairs, but there's no application of a permit that has to be submitted. The second part is Section 6.14G for redevelopment area maintenance standards. So we're adding text to clarify maintenance requirements for accessory structures. And if you look in the staff report that was provided to the board, there's a strike through and underline of the actual changes that are being done to that section. So we're also modifying the text to clarify when fences and walls are required to be painted. And as I stated earlier, it's only going to be required when your fence was painted before. So say, for instance, you have a fence and it's painted blue. When you repair your fence, the repairs have to be painted the same color or as close to that as possible. But if you have a fence that's not painted, just a wooden fence, you're not going to be required to paint that entire fence. What was happening was the older fencing, because of the weather and things, it was a different color than the newer boards. So they were being required to paint their entire fence, which is not the intent of the code, because eventually those new boards are going to look just like the older ones. So you don't want to start incurring additional costs on property owners for things that we should not be doing. And so the language that we're doing is going to clarify that and make it a little bit tighter so it'll be clearer for everybody to understand exactly what will be required when you're doing maintenance and repairs for fencing.
Any questions for Ms. Askew?
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Any questions?
No, I think it sounds great.
Gentlemen?
No questions. Thank you for amending it.
You're welcome.
You know, Rose, people actually in the city were repairing a cypress fence and then painting the wood this color of the cypress fence.
Correct.
So it would all look the same.
Yeah.
I'll raise my hand. I'm one of them. And I remember my first appearance before the Board of Adjustment was on my fence. That's how I got introduced to the Board of Adjustment. And we will still have a Board of Adjustment, will we not?
Yes, Board of Adjustment's not going away.
Yeah, the Board of Adjustment will give citizens relief to argue an otherwise case. They have some very special conditions, and there always are. I mean,
Yes.
we've seen some whoppers, have we not?
Yes, we
That's-
have.
Yeah.
Have.
Okay,
I still
thank you.
get to see them sometimes.
Do you want any action from this board? Would
No,
you-
sir. It was a courtesy presentation. We've gotten requests from redevelopment board members that when we're making amendments to things that affect their area,
Yes.
that we come to you all as a courtesy so you all will know what we're doing moving forward.
Yeah, I'm
So
the
it's an effort to
bad
make
guy.
sure that everyone is on the same page and it won't be a surprise when things start happening in your area and you.
Yeah, well, I think you can share, should it help the effort, that this board felt this was a very important, favorable change. When Ms. Askew finishes, I'll recognize you, Neil.
Are there any questions?
Thank you very much. Good presentation.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yes, sir. Come on up and introduce yourself, Neil. Got to do it for the record. This is Mr. Neil Harrington.
Thank you. That's who I am, Mr. Neil Harrington.
Your address.
I don't have an address. I just wanted to ask, would you give the same courtesy presentation to the code board that I sit on? Because fencing is about every other case. we
Yeah.
have.
Sure, I'll have to talk to Mr. Sykes, who's over
Okay, but that would be very useful to us because it has been confusing for years. And I would say if we have 50 cases, 25 of them are included in.
Fencing, yeah.
So I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course, you're not affecting the setbacks in historic neighborhoods where fences are built right on the lot line and things like that. This is just the look of the fence. Thank you. Thank you, Rose.
You're welcome.
Okay, next item is item C, historic signage in the E-zone areas. And of course, I think we intended South Atlantic too, any of the redevelopment areas that are in our bailiwick, I guess. And since I started this whole thing, let me share with you, if I may, before I allow or invite members to talk, where I am on this issue. After doing a lot of research on this and going back through attempts in the past to come up with some historic signage over about a 35-year period, I feel that our city staff, especially the sign people on the city, might be able to work out a much better mousetrap than we were able to find in the commercial world of historic signage, which is incredibly expensive, not very durable, and probably inappropriate in a lot of areas for what our mission would be. Now, our new city manager feels very, very passionate about our celebrating the historic parts of this community, this town, east and west, beachside, mainland. And we have done that with some historic districts and with some individual structures that are on both the National Register of Historic Places, and that's a qualifier to get on the local register. You cannot be on the local register without being on the National Register. And that helps the city in all the paperwork and all the details and stuff is already done on a federal application. And we have huge neighborhoods, a lot of downtown. There's a huge section on the west side around Bethune-Cookman, including the Mary McLeod Bethune House, that's neither on the National Register or locally on our local register. Or the Howard Thurman House, which is almost impossible to believe, a major important theologian. We probably wouldn't have had a Dr. Martin Luther King without Howard Thurman. In any case, I would like, and I'm certainly open to other comments, of course, from members of the board, but maybe we could refer to our sign people to coming up with a very simple way, metal sign on a metal post that would do two things: it would signify the entrance and exit to whole historic neighborhoods, and perhaps come up with some cost-efficient, it might even be able to be produced in-house. I don't know if we're still producing signs in-house the way we did over on Bellevue Road in the good old days, but I think they have a manufacturer who produces them for them. We have some in Pinewood that were gifted by the city when we did that public-private partnership. But maybe we could ask our sign people, and I don't think they would see this as a burden at all, because I think they anticipate there's going to be needs in this area for some kind of signage that isn't a bronze plaque. A little bronze plaque now is $750 for one this size. The large ones are way over $1,000, and even the toppers that go on top of street signs are now to the point where they're almost they're expensive, and they don't really deliver the punch that we're interested in delivering. My idea was to give the city a modest overlay of signage that would let both our residents be proud of the parts of our city that were historic, and then also identify those parts of the city to tourists who come here. And we have probably the second highest number of historic locations in Volusia County than in the state of Florida. We're the number 2, and the city of Daytona Beach is in the top 10 of cities with historic sites. Now, not all of them are named, not all of them are signed. Many of them are in whole neighborhoods. We took in entire neighborhoods to do that. Those would be easy: entry sign and an exit sign. Cheap, inexpensive. Nobody's going to dig it up and steal it because it's enamel on bronze. You don't have to worry about the metal thieves of the world. And then individual structures. Miss Ann Ruby emailed me several months ago a long laundry list of buildings in the city that we really should, someone, perhaps Historic Preservation Advisory Board, should look at. There are three locations that are in our purview. Pinewood Cemetery, which is on the National Register, I think it should be locally signed, locally protected, as well as the Palmetto Club and the Peninsula Club, pardon me, and the old library that veterans now have a museum in. Those buildings, 3 buildings, 2 in South Atlantic and 1 piece of property in Daytona Beach, would be a great start to see if we can accomplish our mission in an efficient and economical way and get the job done, get the ball rolling. And so I've come all the way around from the very elaborate signage. I went to Winter Park and looked, and many of them don't weather really well. They don't weather as well as our metal signs that we have in the city that we use for wayfaring. And Teresa, you were very eloquent about the need for us to identify important areas in our city like Main Street, especially when you come over the bridge. And that would be very easy to do if we would, if we could ask the city sign people to share with us their ideas on how we might get this done in an efficient, cost-effective way that doesn't belabor the issue and make it a real point of contention.
Mr. Chairman, I got a couple questions for you. Are you, is your request to show historic neighborhoods, or?
Yes.
Or to identify historic sites?
Yes.
Or just neighborhoods in general?
No, I think there has to be a reason to do it. And to me, it was the elements in the three plans all dealt with historic preservation, historic neighborhoods first.
Yeah.
Now, I don't have anything against continuing the program to other neighborhoods that are clearly identified, for a variety of reasons. That's fine with me.
Right.
But I think the historic ones are always at risk. They're not at risk if they're on the National Register and they're locally recognized. Even National Register sites. My neighborhood, Seabreeze University, National Register Historic District, is locally recognized. It's the only thing that has kept people from taking a single-family house and dividing it into a fourplex and paving over the front lawn to provide 2 cars per unit, 8 cars in a front yard. And that has happened in that neighborhood until we had protection, until the city came forward and said, we don't want to see that all on the west side, we don't want to see that over on the east side either. So to me, I think we don't really have that big of a list. It's not as great as I thought, especially if we do entry and exit signs to whole neighborhoods.
Okay.
Ocean Dunes has one way in and really one way out. And there's public right-of-way in all of these areas. I drove around, spent 2 afternoons looking to see if there was a place to put a sign. There are a couple of places where that sign could be shared with another city sign that's an informational sign, not a speed limit or something like that. But most of them have public space. But I would really love to hear from our sign people, who are terrific, who've done a very good job in this city up to now, and I think would love to know they might find support from a board like this to try to move forward in some way. I'd be interested in see what they design in an efficient metal sign that is not going to rust, won't be stolen, and is durable. So that's where I have landed. I've gone all the way around from first base, second base, third base. I'm back at home plate. Any comments or questions? Would that be an acceptable direction for us to take as a next step to invite maybe our sign people, even if it's just to start the conversation? Because I don't think this would be seen as a burden at all on the part of city staff, and it could be done over a period of time.
Or you could just request city staff bring us a proposal.
Yes. Yeah,
You
but
don't have to always.
I'd like to hear, I think it might be beneficial for the sign people if they do a presentation before us, and so we're not bumping a proposal back and forth like a football.
Yeah, but sometimes there's a point where, I'm not disputing what you said, and it's a good idea, and I'm sure everybody in the audience is in agreement with
Well, then
it.
why would you dispute it?
No, I'm saying why waste time and effort to bring somebody from city staff to make a presentation when they could just put a proposal together that Ken Thomas could bring to us, and then we could just approve it.
Well, that would be fine. That
Yeah.
would be fine, but I'll bet you, Mr. Thomas, that the sign guy will want to come to the meeting for a variety of reasons.
But for now, I think that would suffice. Yeah.
And I believe our sign staff is under Public Works.
Yes.
David, who just left.
Yep.
So I'll get with Dave and find out, what is their method of, signage, and what's the protocol of getting signage, because I'm hearing that maybe we already have some signage to identify neighborhoods already out there, so it wouldn't be that we have to recreate some of the neighborhoods.
Exactly.
Okay, so you're just basically wanting some more
Additional
signage, or more elaborate, more quality?
Well,
Well, you didn't say quality.
I
You said
think
additional signage and some to be added on to existing signage, some to be freestanding to identify more areas. That's what you're saying,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and I'm not talking about large, elaborate, this is the trails, where they've got a $75,000 sign where the raccoon's eyes light up when you drive in. Not anything like that, just a very clean and efficient, modern way of presenting a message that you are entering a historic neighborhood and you're leaving a historic neighborhood. I think it could make a world of difference in a place like Main Street, Teresa. Really, Main Street is a historic district on Main Street. And Surfside Village is a good example. We almost got there with Surfside Village, and there was just a little sort of hesitancy to move forward on something like signage there.
And I also work with our staff from planning who is responsible for historic
Yeah.
designations. Maybe he can also give me the history on what historic districts or designations we already have in the Beachside redevelopment.
Yeah, I think Mrs. Tracy Remark, who's a former city commissioner, is the chair of the Historic Preservation Advisory Board. She's got a very good staff.
Why don't we have the Historic Preservation Advisory Board come up with a plan since they're more in tune to what the different areas, and then, and then they could bring us.
They would like, I've already had this discussion with their chairperson, and she has had it with a staff person, and they would like to see us start the ball rolling. I think it has to involve them. I don't know who gives the designation of local historic protection, whether it's that board or whether that board recommends to the city commission. I think that's.
They recommend to the city commission, and one of the biggest obstacles is ownership of the property. The ones that are city-owned, they could bring it forward as with the city commission's approval. But when it's a private property, it is up to the private property owner to make the application for either local or national historic designation.
If it's not a neighborhood. Our neighborhood got 59% of the people living between University Avenue and Seabreeze Boulevard to sign on. That was a requirement.
That's what I'm saying. It's the private property owners have to be the drivers of the change, because it would be a historic district overlay type of zoning that would happen.
Well, I can
So
guarantee you that the existing historic neighborhoods are ready to go. They think it's a great idea, and they wonder why we haven't.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we'll look at those neighborhoods that already have the designation
Yeah.
first.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's look at those.
Those are the ones I'm interested in, the
Yeah,
existing
okay.
ones. I am, however, I am somewhat sensitive to Mrs. Ruby's list of important buildings in our city, and a lot of them are on the west side, that could disappear like that if a developer, bought an adjacent 4.5 acres and needed to take the house down, the Howard Thurman house down.
Yeah, but for this board, we're focusing
Right.
on the B-side.
But that's for our colleagues on the Midtown
On the
board.
Midtown,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay, can we move on to?
Is that a reasonable way to move forward?
in order for Mr. Thomas to be able to take this back to staff or to the city manager or the others, we could get a motion that this board, all the members of the board, majority, agree with this.
I'm trying to get a
Okay,
consensus
I move
before we make a
I move that
pass
we,
flag.
I move that we direct Mr. Thomas to put together a proposal that depicts extra signage to already existing already existing properties that are deemed historical or communities that are deemed historical, and bring that presentation to us for approval.
I'll second.
Well, the only, and I'm glad you seconded it, the only problem is
We just said that we're going to go with existing and not, we just heard that.
there are no existing signs in.
No. We said that we were going to go
You
with
said.
What was said by the city attorney was that we should go with properties that have already been identified as or communities that have been already identified as
Well,
historical.
that was my discussion
Okay,
for us.
right.
That's where.
And so I'm just
saying
I'm just
move forward
going
with
with that.
ones that are already designated.
Because then if we start going into a list of whatever
Well,
buildings.
existing modified signage in your motion, and so that's the problem. I had a grammatical challenge, whether we're talking about existing structures or neighborhoods that are already designated. We'd like them to have signs.
Yeah, I said existing designated communities and/or historical places that have already been identified. Like, we're not going on a scavenger hunt to try to find. Okay, so we are dealing with already existing identified properties and neighborhoods.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I said.
Yeah, and I think your fear about private property, if the house is a National Register property, they've already fought that battle.
What she said is that they have to make the application.
Yeah.
Okay, anyways.
Oh, of course they do.
Okay, there's a motion and a second.
Yeah, any other discussion on what we're doing? We're going to ask our staff to, do you want to involve the sign people in your motion?
No.
Or, no, okay. But the understanding is that the city will be involved in the production of the signs.
I'm trying to utilize,
No, I'm with you, I'm with
Okay.
you, that's fine, that's fine. But you don't like things to keep coming back to us, and that, now when we get this from Kent, we're gonna have to then go back to him again, say yes or no, and then he's gonna have to do it again. I mean, if you wanna have several steps, that's fine with me, but there
well,
could be
there's
second
a motion and a second.
Yeah, there's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Yes.
Is the public person wanting to speak on this?
I don't know. Oh, Ann Ruby, is she? Oh, she is here. I don't know if you were here when you heard me mention your name.
Yeah, I've been here the whole time.
Yes.
Okay, so
Right in the front
I
row.
put down 6B for public comment, but it really is on this item. I think when you want to bring something forward for discussion, and the board is going to be discussing a lot of new things and bringing up your own ideas, it might be good to sort of pre-write what you think, I want to say amendment, and that's not the right word. What's the word?
Motion.
Motion. What would you want the motion to be?
I agree.
So I think that would keep, everybody would have it in their packet, it could be concise, and then you could just tweak around the edges.
That's what
But I
we
think
hope,
that would be a
that's
really
what we
good
hope
thing to do.
Kent will do, and then we'll be able to look at it and tweak it when we
I'm
get it.
saying that next time you want to bring a motion, or anybody else, bring up something like this, come prepared with a motion.
Yeah, but it's hard when.
No, I know it's hard.
When it's like a discussion item, we had no idea coming to the meeting exactly
No,
what
but the
was gonna be.
person who wants to lead the discussion could write something that could then serve as a motion or be modified as a motion.
I'm too wise to try and do that. I would much rather see it develop the way it did, and I appreciate Mr. Paspalakis's motion. We've got a motion, a second. All those in favor, please do so by saying aye. Aye.
And Ann, I appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah,
I think it has a lot of validity.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, what am I looking around for? Okay. Other business.
Skip the budget.
Oh, yeah, the important thing is the budget.
Yeah.
Now, I think we all got a draft copy of a budget.
Last meeting we got last year, and tonight we have this year.
We have this year's budget. I'm sure you had maybe some time to look at last year's, but very few of us had time to look at this year's, but it's in the same form. It's the same kind of a budget. And this is really not what I had in mind. What I had in mind was the legally required document that the city must give the county at the end of each year that gives a narrative on what it accomplished in redevelopment in each one of the redevelopment districts. Ours would be Main Street and South Atlantic, and a budget of money in and money out. Because while this is a very good budget, it sort of skims over, for example, the concept of a carry forward by internally defining any money left over at the end of the year as income for the next rising year. That's the only way it makes sense. And there might be another answer, but I've looked at a lot of budgets in my years and a lot of city budgets, and started out as chair of ECHO in the good old days, almost 50 years ago. And a lot of it was financial and budget work with cities and private not-for-profits and things. So that's a public document too, I think, the annual reports that we say, every city that has redevelopment area is required by the ordinance to say what they did and how they did it and what they used, et cetera. That would be very helpful, I think.
So
to
is
us.
that what you wanted, the annual report, not the budget, but the annual report?
Well, I'd like, the annual report to the county, because it contains a budget.
Last year's.
Yeah. Yeah, we wouldn't have this year's, but last year's.
Well, now we know.
And what I'm interested in is progress. You know, you've been very good about keeping us up to date on the accomplishments that we've made, let's say, this year. But there should be 5 years easily accessible. I mean, it's not a long or big document. It's all public information. Certainly, I think it would certainly help members of the board, especially people who are new to city advisory boards, to get a grasp on what is our terrain, you know, what is our best use. And we're all very interested in helping the city succeed. And I think seeing that report, which is the justification year by year for the collection and the dispersal of funds, is an important part of it, and the narrative is very important. You know, that for a long time, the county refused to allow cities with redevelopment areas to use redevelopment funds as matches on any county grants. That seemed madness to me. That's how I got involved in this whole thing, because I was very ambitious for Daytona Beach, and I was constantly trying to come up with a method that would allow redevelopment dollars that were aimed at a specific public use facility to qualify. And now we're at a rule on the county level where a proposal in a city with using redevelopment dollars can make a brief presentation before the county manager, and he has the authority to say yes or no, that those dollars can match. It makes a huge difference in the balance sheet, as the DOT match against our redevelopment money will certainly give us visual proof of how it works.
We'll email the board, copy of the annual report for last year.
Yeah.
So we won't wait till the next meeting, we'll just email it out to you.
Yeah, with the narrative.
Or the annual report tells you what you did,
Right,
how you spent your money.
Right.
What you spent it on.
right.
Thank
And
you.
it'll also show any deficits or surplus. And I think that's important too. But am I correct that,
I don't think it gets that detailed. It is an overview, 10,000 feet level.
Yeah.
Of the revenues that you receive and essentially the projects and programs or services that you did for that fiscal.
but they have a dollar value?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, so you could match, you could
Yeah.
match it.
Mhm.
Am I correct that the budget that we were given redefines unspent dollars that are not pledged toward a project in the second or third or fourth years? It redefines them as income?
No.
Then where are they in the budget? Where are they in the
They're
document?
budget items that we, in redevelopment, that you carry forward. The money carries forward. It's not like general fund.
But it doesn't, I didn't see any items in the budget that said surplus or carry forward or undesignated overage, or is there a separate trust fund for the Main Street and the South Atlantic redevelopment area?
It is, we have a Blue Road budget trust fund. We have a Main Street trust fund, and we have a South Atlantic trust fund.
And do we have the balances in those trust funds? in
Yeah,
this
it's
document?
actually in your tentative budget.
Okay.
And, yeah, it's actually in your tentative budget, what we didn't spend for last year, and the new budget amount for this year.
But a lot of those monies, like the landscaping for the highway, where you, because you're staff, you anticipate, we know we have money in the trust fund that can go to satisfy that fantastic match with DOT.
Right.
Is that how we use it? I mean,
Yeah, you can. I mean, you got a 3-year limit that you must spend the money.
correct. Okay. All right, thank you. I think if we get the narrative, that would be terrific.
Yeah.
And yeah, please just send it out to us. That would be super.
Yeah, Mr. Waller said some of the money was
Yes.
coming from the CRA.
Yeah. But he didn't say how much and whether it was coming out of this year's levy. Redevelopment money is very interesting because it is predicated on the value of the ad valorem value of land within the district. And if you look at the redevelopment areas in Central Florida, ours is one of the very few where the value of land has remained relatively stable and not increased, which means we haven't reaped yet the benefit of redevelopment. Now, the Russian Hotel is a huge positive thing. The renovation of the Streamline was terrific. But aside from those two, it's hard for me to think of another major project in our redevelopment area that would increase the tax base and pay back both the city and the county for the pledge of these county dollars. Because the way I look at it, and I've looked at a lot of budgets, when the ad valorem value of an area drops, so does the income to the school board, to the hospital, to other agencies that take a draw on a percentage on the value of the land that they service. And I think we're at a very good point in time, Ken, to see all of a sudden these investments come due. And I'm very humbled to play a very small part in it. But that's one of the reasons why I'd like to know more information about what our goals were, how well we accomplished them, what did we spend for it. We have a park at the end of Main Street that we spent $3 million of city land on that's sitting there fenced in, and it's been fenced in since Commissioner McKay was on the city commission, which is what, 10 years ago, 8 years ago? And it's in our plan. It's in the plan. And we have not yet, been able to even consider it. And there are other projects like that in different redevelopment areas within the city. I was just sort of philosophizing out loud, and please forgive me for kind of thinking out loud, but these are some of the things that are in the back of my mind when I would like to see what what our goals were, how well the goals that we state to the county, our priorities, reflect the plan that is still the plans that are still in effect. Anyway, thanks very much. Thanks for your tolerance.
We have two speakers. Ms. Ruby?
Yes. Good evening,
And
Ann.
Ruby, 137 Park Avenue. Just so I'm clear, you're asking for that in addition to what you were received, right? Okay, because I do think you want to examine proposed budget for the upcoming fiscal year.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Nicholson?
And it's public record, Ann. I think you could probably get a copy of it if you like. Yes, John.
John Nicholson, Beachside. You didn't clarify why we lost money this year, why our budget went down. That makes
Who are you directing that at?
You were just talking about we
I
stayed
wouldn't
stable,
know.
but we went down.
I would not know.
Oh.
Maybe
Mr.
Ketna.
Nicholson, Mr. Chairman, actually, Beachside has done well over the last several years. We've had an increase. I can't tell you the percentage, but Beachside has been doing very well.
Good.
Except when we went down.
No, you haven't gone down in the last.
According to Fred, with accounting, the reason why the money went down was because the hotels, because of COVID, lost money. Therefore, they asked for a lowering of their
The bed tax.
Well, no, not the bed tax. The,
Their
rate,
assessment,
their ad valorem rate, their tax rate?
their assessed value.
their assessed value.
You've had an increase in 2021, you've had an
Yeah.
increase in 2022.
Well,
And keep in mind, so that, just for an FYI, just because you may or may not have had any new buildings built, the increase in existing building value increases your tax base.
Right.
So you may not have not one building built, but your values, people made improvements to their properties, your value still goes up in the trust fund.
Well, that's why it
Taken
didn't make
down
any
a
sense
lot
to
of
me.
properties, a lot of major properties in the city have been condemned and removed. And the big complaint the Urban Land Institute had against the city was Main Street, that we should make sure we have infill in the key, the most important street, economic street in our city. We shouldn't allow there to be vacant property. Am I correct, Teresa? I think that was their point. They said they looked like a beautiful smile, that the teeth were knocked out of. And so every time the city smiled, you saw the broken, missing teeth, then a great smile. That was the analogy they used in their report. I'm just wondering, that's all.
Mr. Chairman, since you brought this up, one thing that I would like to add is that there have been a lot of cases, I guess because of Bike Week and Biketoberfest, there's certain rules that apply during those periods for Main Street. That's an advantage for them versus other places on A1A. But those rules should be grandfathered in, because there have been cases where there have been actual buildings on Main Street torn down and then use those rules to their advantage during Bike Week and Biketoberfest. And, and those rules were set up for redevelopment purposes, hoping that the property owners could make more money and reinvest in their property. But it's basically, the result of it is that more buildings are being torn down because it's actually more advantageous to have vacant property on Main Street than it is to have an actual building. And that's contrary to the increase of the tax base that you're talking about. That's contrary to redevelopment. So one of the things that this board should be looking at is at least putting some kind of grandfather-in clause on using the itinerant merchant rule for future, for the future, so that way no more buildings on Main Street get torn down. John, would you agree with that?
Mm-hmm. Went through that. Remember the old Fernwood Hotel?
Yeah.
And that was supposed to be rebuilt 20 years ago.
No, it was torn down on the condition that a hotel would take its place of equal occupancy. And it was Mr. Nicholas George who did that.
Yep.
And then he passed away.
Now, there have been a rule that people have said in the past that if you want to put in some kind of ordinance or what have you, that if a property is torn down and rebuilt to the same square footage or what have you, then they would be given back that, so I don't have a problem with looking at to something like that. I just don't want property to be torn down and nothing rebuilt,
That's what, that is what has, to a certain degree, that is what happened. And nobody faults anyone for making very good use of the property, because, but the big problem is we're capped out on the sales tax that returns to Volusia County. We could have a $20 billion economy here, and we wouldn't get any more money from Tallahassee. So it's good, but it's not as good as I guess as it could be. Okay. And we're just talking about redevelopment.
Okay. So, yeah. All right,
Anything
John,
else?
are you?
John, anything else?
I have a question for you, John. So hotels, you said their assessed value, they were able to get a decrease of their assessed value because
That's
of
what
COVID?
Fred said. Because
Not
the
all
house
of
next-
them. Not all of them.
Because the
Some
house
of them.
next to me was purchased for $300, sold for $750. And there were several houses around that went from $200 and sold for $500, $499. And to me, if all the properties around me are going up and the hotel across from me, the Russians, went online, how did we lose money?
Yeah.
And he said, oh, well, that's because the hotels had a reduction. but it didn't make sense to me. And you're saying that it didn't happen.
No, I'm not saying that that probably didn't happen, but I'm saying in totality.
That was a
your
totality.
trust fund,
How do we-
your allocations increased.
Okay.
How do we find out if that happened?
Year.
Well, the tax assessor, or the tax assessor is the one who
Yeah.
rules on that.
Right.
You have to go
Because-
before the valuation board in
Yeah.
order to get your property taxes decreased.
Yeah, and the
Right,
argument
but if they, I'm just
was-
asking, how do we find out if they negotiated a deal to get their assessed
Well, it
values
wasn't a
raised?
deal, there's a fractional, there's a thing, if you had 80% of the business you had the previous year, you have a cause of action. You can say, well, I didn't make what I did last year, we were at 75 or 80%, I need a reduction in my ad valorem taxation. And there are conditions where that has happened.
And that's what affects you all.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, when the encumbered is like 9.9 million, Fred had 5, so I don't, and where does this extra money go? Because you've always had a tremendous amount of money, and about 2.4 million goes to a bond, okay, for the hotels that we built. So you have $2.5 million to spend. You spend like $56,000 for Dino's fireworks. Where does the rest of the money go? All right? You end up with spending, sorry to say this, but staff is expensive. You're charged 3 times what Midtown is and downtown is for your lawyer.
Yeah.
They pay $5,000 a year for the lawyer. We spend $19,000 a year for a lawyer. Okay? Our cost for Reed Berger was $75,000. Their cost was $25,000. So by the time you added up what we paid for staff, it was 3 times what the other, and we were told, oh, well, because you have more money, you can spend more. We can take more money from you for that. So you ended up with, with all of the give and take, there was still like $2 million missing.
No, I don't think it was missing.
No, it's not budgeted because you can't spend it. It's not spent in your area.
It's in the trust fund, that's
There
what
you
I'm
go.
assuming where it is.
And I can't find the trust funds. I can't get how much money that we raised each year is not being spent. It's put somewhere. Because remember Midtown?
I think it can
When they
only
wanted
go
to do
in
Orange
the
Avenue,
trust fund.
they
It's in a
found
Swiss
$1
bank
million.
account,
Yeah.
John, come on.
They found $1 million for Orange Avenue that Midtown never knew they had.
Sure, it's
So
not
how much money do you have that you don't know you've got?
Well, we don't have it, because if we had it, we'd be
No.
very involved in helping to,
No,
helping to do something
Gary,
with
you
it.
have it. It's somewhere
Well,
for
we
a
don't-
purpose.
We don't have it, but I think it's in the
As a
trust
bo-
fund. I
as-
think it's sitting in the trust fund, I would assume.
Okay, anyways.
Is it in
Also,
one of the
John,
trust funds?
Also, John, the Beachside has challenges that cost more to fuel, like police, than downtown does. There
I mean,
are,
our 2 policemen is so much more expensive than the 28 policemen in another district? Really?
no, I didn't say that.
Oh,
I
okay.
said that the combination, we have a police station on the Beachside. They don't have one in the downtown area.
And they have 2 in Midtown.
Well, we're not talking about Midtown. Midtown
Well-
is another issue, but there are economic and population differences that account for, I think, some of the difference in costs. But you are correct. Mr. Berger was at the end of his career, he was at the top of his salary
Mr.
rank, and you
Chairman,
shouldn't hold that
We
against
paid
him.
it.
Mr. Chairman, you shouldn't be debating.
Okay.
Let
No,
John,
right.
I know, but let John finish his thing, and then we move on to the next item.
Thank you,
Okay.
Daddy.
But Gary,
Okay. Yes.
DDA has a staff, public staff of 4. We have a public staff of 1. And there's rumor that we're getting David's replacement. After 15 years, we will get a project manager, I'm told, in this budget. But they've always had one. They've always supplied the DDA, which is another thing I would ask you guys to ask for maybe $150,000 from your funds for advertisement for Boardwalk and Main Street.
Well, Kent and I talked about a program component that it's sort of silly that this board doesn't consider as an appropriate use of some modest redevelopment funds programming that either brings people into the area to the boardwalk, increases the economic activity in the area, and that's allowable. We got a green light response on that. Anyway, yes, Ms. Ruby.
137 Park Avenue, Ann Ruby. So I one time did a deep dive into fiscal year 2017, and what I learned was there are certain expenses like legal, like IT, that are allocated across all the CRAs, and they're allocated based on their revenue. Certain things like the salary of the director, of the project manager, is assigned directly to that CRA, which makes sense. So, this notion that John has, somehow we're not paying our fair share, I don't know how else you would allocate legal or IT expenses. But I do remember we didn't spend all the money we made in fiscal year 2017, and I'm wondering, I have two questions. Where is it sitting, and how can we find out how much that is? Because I'm assuming, like you say, it's in a trust fund, but what is that fund number, and how can we find out what goes in and out of it? I think that would be useful information. That's something I've never asked or tried to track down. The other thing that I've noticed, and I haven't tracked down or done anything with, is that if you look at what the county says they're sending, and then you look at the ins and outs, they don't always tie up to the same fiscal year amounts.
No.
And I just wish that it would be more transparent so that you could see an exact accounting of how the county money comes in and where it goes exactly as it flows through. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other comments, any other questions on that topic? We go to other business, redevelopment project update. Kent?
No, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other public comment? We've had public comment. Any other board comment?
Wait, you got John walking up. Let him make his comment.
Well, we'll get him after board comments. Any other board comments?
No.
No? Teresa?
I mean, when I compare the two, and I know it's tentative, but it looks, I agree with your comment, that it went up. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Young lady?
No, I'm good, thank you.
No comments, anything? Okay.
I do want to. I don't want to apologize, but I feel bad that you're like walked into walked into this, and but anyways, all right. That's.
Yes, Mr. Nicholson.
A couple things. I'll start at the bottom. On our kiosk on Main Street, I'm wondering if we could do a solar panel at the top and have an LED screen that can be changed easily. Things that are coming on, instead of posters that are sometimes out of date. Like one time we had it like 2 years out of date. Secondly, what about on ISB putting in the blue lane that they have in the new park for bicycles and jogging? Or that rather than having a bicycle lane, just put in a colored lane down ISB. County, I talked to the county staff. It's in the budget. They're going to redo the Dolphin Park and the 2 parking lots at the Ocean Center with replacing the mulch with a rubberized thing and more landscaping. Talked about Midtown project manager. Midtown has asked the staff, and you might want to do that. I remember Reed said, I don't know what's happening in the project. They don't tell me. So they get 4 pages of what's happening in their Midtown area. You may want to get the same thing of what's happening in the area. And lastly, I've already talked to 2 of them. $2 million is going into Dickerson Center to increase and enhance the Dickerson Center. About $2 million is going into Daisy Stocking Park to enhance it. $0 is going into Boardwalk Park, which thousands and millions of tourists see every year. I'm asking you to consider asking for a redesign, because you say after a while it gets old. They just replaced the grass in the Boardwalk Park. The rest of it needs a little tender loving care. And since so many people see the boardwalk, it really should be our finest park. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Kent, anything you'd like to share with us? No. Anything? Any member of the board? Hearing none, we will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.